Welcome to Bendy Bodies with the Hypermobility MD, your podcast to learn all about the benefits and challenges of being bendy. This is co-host Jennifer Milner, here today with Dr. Linda Bluestein. Before we introduce our incredibly special guest, a couple of quick reminders. Please subscribe and leave a review. This really helps get the word out because this podcast is for you. Today, we have the great pleasure of speaking with Mariaelena Ruiz. Mariaelena began her studies in Caracas, Venezuela, where she was trained by prima ballerina Nina Novak. At age 14, Mariaelena became the youngest member of the Ballet Nacional de Caracas, and soon after, she won third place junior division at the Jackson, USA International Ballet Competition, receiving a full scholarship to continue her studies at the School of American Ballet in New York. She won the Best Couple Award in third place senior division at the Varna International Ballet Competition and also won at the Prix in Paris. As a professional, Mariaelena performed principal roles for many companies in the US and Europe. And between 2000 and 2006, Mariaelena danced an all-Balanchine repertoire in the Suzanne Farrell Ballet. In 2000, she began teaching part-time at the Rock School for Dance Education and became full-time ballet master at the Rock School in 2006. In 2015, she started building and directing her new professional training program at Cary Ballet Conservatory, where she continues to coach and train the next generation of outstanding dancers and has been featured on the cover of Dance Teacher magazine. Mariaelena has been a judge and guest teacher for the Youth America Grand Prix and Dance America competition in Argentina, and has also worked with the New York International Ballet Competition. She was featured in the award-winning documentary First Position. She has coached medalists from major competitions including Moscow IBC, Jackson USA IBC, Boston IBC, Prix de Lausanne, Youth America Grand Prix, and American Dance Competition. Her former students are dancing professional all over the world in companies and on Broadway. Mariaelena is now looking forward to even greater success as a teacher and a coach. She's been named the Outstanding Teacher at ADC IBC, and most recently was the 2019 YAGP New York City Finals Outstanding Teacher. Mariaelena, hello, and welcome to Bendy Bodies.
Thank you. I am so excited to be talking to both of you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. We are excited to have you here, right, Linda?
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So happy to get to meet you.
Yes, we have so much we want to talk to you about. So let's just kind of jump into it. If we could start with your training. So you grew up studying under prima ballerina Nina Novak and then danced for the Ballet Nacional de Caracas and then went to the School of American Ballet. So before you were even an adult, you had studied Vaganova, Cuban, and Balanchine method. So how did that shape you as an artist?
Back then, I didn't know. It was kind of like evolving, but I was incredibly lucky. I had the strength of the Vaganova training very early on, the discipline that comes with that as well, and the speed and the dynamics of Balanchine training that was incredibly necessary for me as well. And then my Cuban teacher that after I came back from SAB, and actually if we jump forward years and years after that, Magali Suarez, she's the one after a really bad injury that kind of put me together again. So, I was incredibly lucky, and I've been trying and to keep the best of all those techniques in the way I teach. And I think it made me a better dancer and also a better teacher.
It's interesting you say that, because on one hand, you can look at how it shapes you as an artist, right? And how this technique gave you this and this technique gave you that, and you can pull it all together and be a more well-rounded artist. But it's completely different in how it shapes you as a teacher. So speak a little bit more about that.
Well, I would add to my Vaganova, Cuban, and American training, I would add injuries and physical therapy. I was very lucky that I didn't have many, but the two that I had were major. So I became very interested in alignment, because one of them was I had kind of a reconstructed big toe. It was an infection that went bad and it went into the bone, and then they had to reconstruct my toe, and I was already at the end of my career.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a year in physical therapy, learning to walk again, alignment. I spent a year in a pool. I became, a prune, because if they told me go to a pool twice a week, I would go, the dancer's mentality. I would go 5 times and all of that. So I became very interested in how to do things right, because I had very little time. I was already in my 30s, and I had already little time to recover and do it right. And that's also when I went to Magali, and she retrained me again that year. So I would say that a combination of all those things, I became more interested in technique. I became more interested in how to apply the best things of all those techniques, and the strength I had known all along, because I had done it as a dancer. Like if we, in Cleveland Ballet, we had people from the balancing trust come and set theme variations, I would immediately check my balancing training. With Suzanne Farrell, it was turning your brain immediately into balancing training, but keeping the strength of the Vaganov and the Cuban training. So I've been able to mix all of that. What the injuries did for me that I was not aware, was paying so much attention of doing things correctly and slowly. Even if it was 10 repetitions, but they were done right. And of course, when you do 3 pirouettes and when you stay in a balance and all of that is great. But when you are, oh my God, I can bend my foot again so that I can walk correctly, or that I can walk. It is a whole different spectrum. And of course, your doctors are telling you, you're going to be lucky if you can walk again and all of that. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I have done you with the National Ballet of Canada in a year. That's not going to happen. In my career, I'm going to do it. So, so you kind of like, I became very, very aware of physical therapy and of cross training, which I had done throughout my whole career, but I became much more aware of it and interested in it.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because I always say when I go teach a workshop at any studio or company, I say the only people who sign up for an injury prevention class are people who have already been injured.
Yes.
Because until that happens, people are like, I don't need to take that. That's fine. I'm fine. But then once you've had that first injury, you realize, oh, this matters. I need to cross train. I need to look at my technique. I need to look at that alignment. I need to address it in a different way. Whether you're doing balancing arms or Cicchetti arms, there are still some fundamental biomechanical issues that have to happen.
Absolutely.
So that's great. And I love that you learned that kind of, it's painful that it happens, at the expense of an injury, but you learned it kind of early on in your career, at least as far as your teaching career. So that already started to shape who you were going to be as a teacher, which is fantastic. Now you also are hypermobile, right? And have your own bendy body issues to go along with it. So science's kind of understanding of hypermobility has changed a lot in the past 10 years. And we've come a really long way in understanding it and learning how to kind of work with it. So when you were training, were there teachers who helped you figure that out, how to use it and how to control it? Or was that just sort of up to you?
I didn't realize, and they focused on strength and technique a lot. They didn't focus on my hypermobility. Like it wasn't about, let's show the extension and stay there for 15 seconds or anything like that. They were very concerned about getting me stronger. And if I go back also, I was the youngest and the tallest, and the most bendy, So I would see my peers in the same class already doing fouettes, already doing, with stronger muscles. 2 to 3 years when you have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, is a very different situation, or 12 to 15. So I was part of that group because I was talented and they were pushing me forward, but I couldn't do some of the stuff strength-wise that they could do. Of course, hit a line and have beautiful shapes and stuff like that that they couldn't do as well. But I didn't have the strength. I didn't know where my center was and all of that. So they did not, what I have to say is that they didn't focus on my bendiness. They focused on, you need to get stronger. And at the time was, releves, repetition, and all of that. It was Vaganova. We had, the same class in the afternoon. We knew the class, so you could really work on strengthening and all of that. Classical repertoire. I was introduced to classical repertoire very early on, and I think that's what shaped me too. Because people say that I can see variations or things that kids can do that are going to look really good on them. But I think it comes from my training. My teacher knew exactly, what variation at what age, what comes next, and all of that. And she had a very good progression of all of that. Of course, when you're that age, I'm like, why am I doing Bluebird? Or why am I doing Nutcracker? Why am I not doing the variation yet? But you realize when you look back, I understand her. She was building you up. And I think a lot of the answers are in the classical repertoire and how you break it down. Because you just have somebody do a variation, but you're not breaking the step. And where does the step come from in class? You're not doing anything. So I would say that, and I would thank my early training that they never focused on my bendiness. I didn't realize that I needed more cross training and more strength until I went to SAB, because I had long fourths to deal with. I had battus to deal with. I had speed and accents in. I do a lot of accents in now, just so that we can connect more. Sometimes I have to remind my team, my other teachers to remind me that it's not accent in all the time. So, I began Pilates and gyrotonics when I went to SAB. And that's when I found my core. It's because the speed is what got me. I was like, I would see, people, Diana White and people, Wendy Whalen and all these people in New York City Ballet dancing with that speed. They had long legs. They had, in a balancing company, that's not an option. Being tall, not moving fast.
Right.
So, but for me, it was very difficult. The long forwards coming from a hyperextension and from my hyperextended legs, from a long being forth with the back leg straight and pulling in. So that I needed a lot. I needed more strength for that. So that's when I became more into cross training. But I do have to say, my teachers were not into, overstretching me or anything like that. It was just the normal. Of course, they would see that it would go beyond what other people could do, but it wasn't about that. And I think I was lucky about that.
That your teachers worked kind of slowly and patiently.
They worked
within your own framework.
And they focused on strength. They didn't focus on the, on the flexibility so much. They focused actually less flexibility and more strength.
Which is, we had an earlier interview with Beck Ann, one of your former students, Beck Ann Sisk, and she said the same thing. She said that even with all her flexibility, I knew our listeners would want to know, how does she get more flexible? And she said she doesn't. She works on the strength to hold that flexibility. And so thank you for reinforcing that as well.
It was great to hear that. It was great to hear that from her, because she had been, and at the time that I got her, she was so hypermobile. She her legs were away from her, and I was just like, we need to focus on your strength. Lower your legs. We never did anything above 90 until we got to adagio or stretching. It's gonna be there. It's not gonna go away, because it's not like you're not stretching. You're gonna do your stretching, your normal stretching. We never sat her on an oversplit. We never went over things. Of course, there was choreography created on her, not by me, that showed all that,
Right.
But it wasn't like grab your leg, stay for 30 seconds and wait for people to clap. It was part of the artistry. It was part of showing how incredible her body was, but training her was, taught me a lot. Learned a lot about myself, and I understood my teachers a lot, and I knew I had a diamond in the raw, and I was like, I gotta do this right.
You have to do it right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And
Right.
going back to something you said earlier about the importance of picking the right variation at the right time, I think a lot of times these days, we feel that pressure to let the 10-year-old do White Swan or whatever, whatever they think is going to bring them joy, and let them show off their flashiness and all of that. And it's so important to have a long-term plan for a student and not just think, what's going to get me the highest numbers in this competition or the highest amount of scholarship this year. What's going to keep them dancing and what's going to bring them to fruition, to all they can be, 5 years from now or whatever. So I love that you have that structure and that thought behind your head. Let's do this one and then this one. And it's about the work and bringing you up slowly. Do you see a difference? One of the things that's hard for teachers is when you see someone who is advanced as a dancer, like you were, you want to move them up and help move them faster, but at the same time, you have to hold them back until they have that strength, like you talked about. So do you see some of that tension in classes with, well, she's so good, I want to promote her, but also I want to give her a little more time to grow into her body and give her that strength?
That's a great question, because, and people listening to this that work with me, and parents and teachers that I've had meetings with, and students, they'll know exactly, because I have a say, an arrow, when you pull it back, where's it going to go? How far are you going to pull it back so that it can go where? So I'm pulling you back slowly so that I can propel you forward, so that you're going to have all the basics and all the strength to actually move forward quickly. I said that the sooner we get this basic stuff, and this is with my lower levels, because sometimes they look at me like, we're going to do relatively slow again. I was like, the sooner we get that alignment, the freer you're going to be. So that, that is very important. And, I think it comes with trust also with your teacher and with your coach. And I try to convey that I have your best interest at heart. I am not perfect. I have not done things perfect, but I've done this for a long time. And I've done it, with some success. I don't expect you to be my first mistake, my mistake. But if we realize that we've made a mistake, we'll fix it along the way, and we'll move forward. But I think communication is very important. And I think coming from the right place and the right experience. I know that slowing you down and breaking things down is going to make you better. So that is my philosophy. And if you accept that, and if you give me the time, because the other thing is that they want things yesterday, and I do too. But all you have is the work that you can do today and in this minute, and communication and trust, and giving the coach the time and the teacher the time, giving yourself the time. Right.
And I do see a difference between a dancer that's not hypermobile and a dancer who is hypermobile. In general, the hypermobile dancers just take longer. And I think it was Lisa Howell. Is it right, Linda? We interviewed Lisa Howell, and she talked about how when she has a hypermobile dancer, she'll pull her aside and say, listen, you may go on point later than others. Like, I may keep you off point longer. I may try to keep you in a lower level longer. I want to give you time to get control of your body and to get you stronger, so that when you are ready to do those things, you just take off. So it's probably the same concept as the arrow, giving those bendy, crazy bodies a chance to
and then
to get strong.
They're going to be bendy their whole lives, but then once they get it, it's fabulous. It's so beautiful to watch. But you're going to have to work at it the rest of your life, though, because it's going to be the same bendy body. It's just going to get stronger, but you're going to have the tools. The important thing is that you have the tools.
Yes. You will. And you were starting to teach even while you were still performing. Do you feel like the fact that you were performing and dealing with injuries and teaching all at the same time kind of made you a better teacher because you were still dealing with those things yourself?
I divide my teaching career. I started teaching because the contract we had with the Kennedy Center was not full-time. So I needed something to do while the while the company was off and making money and stuff like that. And I had just moved to Philadelphia, and they gave me some part-time work at the rock school, and I'm so grateful for that. But I am a firm believer that you have to be done with dancing to become a good teacher. And that's my experience.
Interesting.
It's
Can you explain why?
It's because it's not about you anymore. Or you have to be able to leave your dancing shoes outside the door when you come into the studio to teach. It's not about how beautiful you do things and how my pirouettes look. It's about how your pirouettes are going to look and how I'm going to help you, how I'm going to help the student. So I was still in dancing mentality. And then the injury happened. And then that's when I divide. That's when I said it in the other podcast. I said, teaching found me. I was also going through a very difficult personal time. And the injury and the personal situation happened at the same time. Everything comes together, right?
Right.
And teaching found me. I mean, I was in the studio trying things for the students. I had just, they had just promoted me to full time, and I became like obsessed in getting better at what I was doing. And then the injury also helped me because I knew that I wanted to get better, and I had this very small window of opportunity to dance for that last year, because I knew it would probably be done. I wasn't, after that surgery, I wouldn't be able to keep up with 8 hours a day of or somebody creating a ballet on you or anything like that. So
right.
I wanted to do it well, and I became very interested in how to help other people do it well.
I love that. And sometimes teachers aren't quite finished with their own career, and you can see that in the classroom sometimes, especially with the, some of the high profile guest teachers, that my dancers might walk out from a master class feeling almost worse about themselves just because they're comparing themselves to the teacher that's there and doing these beautiful demonstrations and thinking, oh, I'm never,
Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
If you're going to be a coach and if you're going to take somebody's career from A to Z, it takes a different type of relationship, and it takes a different type of, the coach you have and the teacher you have has to be on about the dancer,
Right.
I mean, I can still show certain things and my feet are going to point and stuff like that, but it's not about that. It just has to be the teaching, and the dancer and the student has to be your focus.
There has to be that emotional investment in it. Yeah, absolutely. So now that you are teaching dancers full time, you've transitioned into that. You said that you had started finding cross training and sort of working on proper technique while you were injured. So do you find in general ballet class is sufficient for dancers, or do you encourage cross training? Do you try to add conditioning exercises to your class? How do you help them figure out how to manage their bodies and be strong?
I know that, there are certain techniques and certain schools that say cross training is not allowed. I believe in it because I practiced it, and it became something that helped me tremendously. And I've seen it in other people. So yes, my program has conditioning for men and conditioning for girls once a week. We brought progressive ballet technique. We have Pilates. We brought gyrotonics also. And even though we don't have a gym in our facility, I tell, the guys and the girls that it's important for them to get their cardio up. We had a trainer that came, and, he had them running around the facility, which is it's really big. And the weather was nice still. So, the cardio is very important. Ballet still, my approach is that I don't stop between sides. I mean, you hear my corrections as you go. I have two groups in center, and a stage right and a stage left. Everybody's going to laugh that is listening to this because they've known this for 20 years. If I change groups and I change lines, But if stage right is going, stage left is in a position. They're not stretching or anything like that. So you're always, because it's important to, even if you're going to be in the corps ballet for 30 minutes and changing, you have to have the endurance to do that. And I think the only thing with ballet is that you break out of it very quickly, and then you're required to do a pas or something that it's 15 minutes long.
It's true.
So you have to kind of integrate the class, make the class, so that you continue that aerobic work and include cross training. I know running, it's sometimes for dancers, it's, on their joints, it's hard on their joints, but there's biking, there's stationary bike, and there is elliptical and things that you can do even with your own weight that you can do to keep your stamina. I don't think it's going to come out of nowhere that you can just do a 15-minute ballet if you don't cross train.
Right.
It's just not going to come just from one ballet class a day. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Well, and I always tell my dancers, listen, that 1 minute and 27-second petit allegro combination is not going to get you ready for snow. Snow's 11 minutes long.
Exactly.
You have to do something else. So you've been teaching for about 10 years now, part-time and full-time. Have you seen common problems and weaknesses with hypermobile dancers in general, other than that they're a little bit slower starter and they have to get control of their strength sooner? What have you observed with them?
Well, it's like my eye goes immediately to like that one, and, the hypermobile. I can, it's like my nose goes. The reality is that, with hypermobile dancers, if you catch the things with our schools now, that, especially in America, or, that you get a dancer either that came from another school or that came to a recreational level, and then they didn't know that it was going to become something. Right. It wasn't that, the boss went like in Cuba and picked the one with the perfect ears, the perfect this, the perfect femur, the perfect, and then they have the perfect physicality. And even if they're hypermobile, they work with them since they're younger and stuff like that. We are lucky. I mean, like with Becan, she came through the school, and then, we were lucky to train her. I've had other hypermobile dancers, and we have some now in our program too that are coming up, and I call them the noodle number 2 because I have a noodle now, because Becan was noodle number 1.
Right.
And, I think we've all gotten, and our teachers here too, we've gotten aware of, they're very, very good about, realizing that we have a hypermobile dancer and how we're going to approach it. And I think we have the same thoughts and the same mentality, and talk to each other as a team, how we're going to approach this dancer. And we're all on the same page about slowing it down and bringing them forward a little bit slower. We talk to the dancer, we talk to the parents, because they feel frustrated. They're like, we have this beautiful body, and now with Instagram and everything, of course they hit amazing positions. I mean, you look at those feet and those legs and those lines, but it's like, how do you get from A to B? How did you get up there? It's like,
right.
It's discombobulated, but you hit the beautiful picture. So yeah, we are very aware of them very early on, as early as we can be. Some of them that haven't come through the school, we get from somewhere else, and sometimes come with really bad habits. And that's, I don't know, you guys will agree with me, I don't know what's worse. I think it's better to bring a dancer up than when you get it already with the bad habits. Creating a blank, a white canvas again. They get very frustrated, especially if it's an age that, they want to get the wow effect. They want to get the, and they feel that that's what they're good at. So you're taking away something that I'm actually good at. And we just approach them and be like, listen, we've got to fix this, because also you've got to walk when you're 50.
Right. Yes.
Thank
You know?
you. Thank you for that. Yes.
Oh, it's like, and Cirque du Soleil and gymnastics and all of that. But remember that gymnastics, if I'm correct, that they don't get past 21 or 22.
Right.
It's a much shorter career. Ballet is an art form that it's longer, that you have to have longevity, and
Mm-hmm.
it's important that you stay healthy and that you stay, able to have a normal life,
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah, definitely. We all want to move as long as possible, as well as possible, but I think we don't always think of those things when we're younger. So I'm really glad that you stress that with your students. That's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What trends have you observed over the years in terms of hypermobility, injuries, and career longevity? You've obviously been dancing for a long time and teaching for a long time. Have you observed any particular changes over that period of time?
Yeah, I think it's been like maybe that I'm aware of, maybe 5-8 years ago. It's become there's two sides. Dance has become much more popular on TV with all these shows and
Right.
stuff like that, which is amazing, that it's in everybody's living room or computer, or that we have access to that. And people think, I want to do that, but the thing is, I want to do that comes with a whole amount of training and a whole amount of hours and a whole amount of years. But there are a lot of people that have become interested in dance. Sometimes they become interested because of the overextensions and the wow effect and all of that. And there's been something positive about that, but I think it can be deceiving in a way. I just hope that, and from what I've seen in the last years, it should be just part of the movement. It should not be about that, about how long you're going to hold your leg and how long you're going to stretch, and it's tough because it becomes very circus-like, and I would love it to stay as part of the art form. Like it's an artistic movement, not about that. And that's what I've seen. It's become a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And the kids think that that's that's what they see, and the Instagram and all of that, and they want to be that. So I think our job is to guide them, that's fine, and it has a place. But if this is the art form that you choose, then there's other ways.
Definitely. And have you seen that impact injuries amongst your dancers?
Yeah. You see Becan. She's been very lucky because she built strength since she was very young, and we had her very young. Right. And then she kept all those things as she moved in her career. Yeah, I've seen hip injuries. I've seen back injuries. In our program, we've been very lucky. They have overuse injuries, that because sometimes you come from a program that you did 3 times a week, and then you come into 8 hours or 6 hours a day. We try to build them up, but still it needs some adapting. I will say I've seen people that have been trained with overstretching and have come to us after. They have some difficulties and some injuries.
Sure. And speaking of overstretching and, other kids that are coming to you from other programs, what advice do you give to other teachers who are working with hypermobile dancers?
Focus on strength. Focus on strength, focus on technique, focus on quality, not quantity. Focus on building their base strong, so that then they can have something to go from, to build a beautiful, I say a white canvas, so that you can have a Picasso. You can't start a Picasso from already a painted Picasso. You have to have a white canvas. So you gotta give them that, and be okay to slow things down. I think it's just not popular. It just, you become as a teacher pressured, and you have this, well, but I have this flexibility, and this other teacher's going to use it because this solo they're going to do for me, it's going to showcase that. So I'm going to go there. So that's the issue. You lose. Sometimes you're afraid of, people are afraid of losing students and they give in. And then, I think follow your instinct and follow your guidelines of what works, and educate yourself and talk to people like you, talk to other teachers and dancers, that have had those issues, and go from there, and don't give in to the pressure. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yes.
Definitely. And what about healthcare professionals like myself and like Jennifer, who work with dancers? What can we do? How can we work best with dance teachers to help the dancer optimize their career longevity? What can we do?
I think it's very important. I mean, like what you're doing right now. I think, webinars and classes and communication with teachers. I think it's important. Sometimes there's been a couple of trends, right? Because, with physical therapy and with doctors and stuff like that. And we are all, the teachers, I mean, myself, we're all about slowing things down. I have found, this is my experience, that dancers sometimes become we have to teach the dancers and the parents the difference between an injury and soreness.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and this is, I don't want to be like, I'm old fashioned, you have to hang on to pain and stuff like that. Of course, pain, it's telling you something. But of course, if you went for, I use the run analogy because, I run. And if you went for a long run and it's your first long run after, of your training, you're going to be sore, So you make sure that all those muscles are strong enough, but it's things that you haven't done before. So I think it's important for physical therapists and doctors, and that be on the same page with the dancer. Okay, what have you done? What is different? Because sometimes it's confusing to teachers as well. Like, okay, I can't train you if you can't stand. But the other thing that happens is, like, if you can't stand, if you can't do a tendu, I'm okay to do petit allegro. How is that possible?
Right.
Because petit allegro is more fun.
I'm okay now. Absolutely not. If you stopped at a Grand Batman's, a bar, because it's the last thing you could do, you're done. Mm-hmm. You're not doing variations. You're not doing point, because I'm not building you up to do that. Mm-hmm. So that is very, very, I think it educates teachers and educate dancers of the evolution that needs to happen. Like, you can't dance if you didn't warm up properly. Mm-hmm. Like, I do not allow, like, choreographers or myself to come into the studio and choreograph things on the dancers without having a proper class or a proper warm up. And I know people walk in the studio sometimes and they just start, if there's an emergency, of course things happen and you're trained for it and your body's but as a trend, as something that we allow, no, that's just not. I think training it's the most important part. It's what's going to keep you going. It's where you're building your foundation, and that foundation is what you're going to show a choreographer or a director or anything like that. Is what's going to bring you to the next level. So I think it's important of communicating with teachers and dancers how to build from the bottom up. That you can't just go up here and do crazy stuff without building all the other stuff. And injuries, I mean, like, what's an injury? Of course, if you twisted your ankle and you broke your foot, but a lot of confusion with stress fractures, a lot of that. That's a new thing. It hasn't been new. It's like 8-10 years that, I didn't know anything about stress fractures when I was training. I probably had them, and, but there's a lot of, there has to be communication between the physical therapist, the doctor, and the dancer and the parent. And we all have to be on the same page, which is making the dancer better. Mm-hmm. But it gets like, if we slow down and then this doctor slows down and the physical therapist, everybody just gets kind of like So when are we going to start moving? What's going to happen? And then, they need to be healthy. They need to be healthy mentally and physically also. That's very important to us. And I think that will be a good conversation between doctors, physical therapists, and teachers and dancers.
I agree. And I love that you brought up stress fractures in particular, because I think so many people think of, in fact, a lot of even my colleagues, for sure, physicians, think of bones as being more static, but we're constantly building more bone and losing bone. So if that balance is off, then that's how something like a stress fracture can develop. So I'm really glad that you brought that up specifically. So. And you've had a lot of experience in the ballet competition world, and you successfully competed yourself. You've been a judge and a guest teacher for many of the major competitions, and as well as you've successfully coached several young dancers on multiple wins. You've also been named the YAGP Finals Outstanding Teacher just this past year. And in the competition world, extreme ranges of motion are often celebrated and encouraged for the wow factor, as you had mentioned earlier. How do you help your students work to their full potential while making sure that they have the strength to do so safely?
Focus on strength. And I must say that there are certain competitions that do not, I see it in the judges' scores and the judges' writings. And I would say that 95% of the time, they say focus on your technique, focus on, too extreme or something like that. I feel that, there are people out there that are interested in seeing more of your technique and your artistry and all of that. So, like we were saying, if you go with the trend, it also depends who your teacher is, what school you're going, and what they are about. I feel like there are certain competitions, like I said, that are not into that and that are looking at your longevity, are looking at your career. If you're going to get into a ballet company, that's going to be used 1%, 2%. If you're going to be passing through an extension to go to the next thing and all of that, it's not going to be about that. So I hope that it continues to decrease the interest in that, and that, as professionals and educators and judges and responsible competitions, we can guide the dancers and the teachers in the correct way.
Excellent. And what words of advice would you give to the frustrated, younger, hypermobile dancers who feel like they just cannot quite get it together?
Yeah, I hear you. I think if you can hang in there, I think if you can focus on your strength, I think if you can focus on your technique, your conditioning, finding those muscles that work for you, you are not going to be, your body does not work the same way as somebody else's that you see has a different muscle form and less flexibility. I think it will be worth it. It will be worth the time. It will be worth, once you get that strength and you get control of your body, it's just going to be so beautiful that, you're going to actually pass those people that are ahead of you right now, because their bodies are, easier to deal with in the beginning. But once you get that strength, once you get that control of your body and you know where you are, I think it's worth it. It's worth the wait.
Sure. And Beck Ann had really went into a fair bit of detail about working with you and how you really helped her to understand how to work with her hypermobility and not to just rely on it as, and just use it and lean into it. And, but that you really worked with her on learning how to rein that in and control it. So.
Yeah. Bring your legs down, control everything from your core. Yeah, repetition, repetition, repetition. Go through your feet, in the middle of your foot, slowly, down slowly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It might be
Yes.
boring, but it's going to pay off. It's
Yes.
going to pay off. There are also different types of hyperextension.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you have backhand, and I had the same thing. It's a lot easier when you're hyperextended and you have hypermobile foot as well,
Right.
because it's helpful, because you can't think of the back of your knee. You have to think of where your hip aligns with your toe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your
Right.
how you connect your inner thighs to all of that. You can't think from the back of the knee ever. So it is very helpful when you have a foot that will allow you to be on top of that. You know, so when we have hyperextended dancers that are back and don't have that range of motion in the ankle, it's a little bit harder because they sit back in the knee a lot easier instead of going on top. Core work, inner thigh work, bring your legs down, bring your legs down, and move everything from your core and your inner thighs.
Preach it.
Yeah.
I think we need a shirt for you that says
Bring your legs
Bring
down.
your legs down.
I don't care, big cat.
Slow it down.
I know you can do it. Bring your legs down slowly. You know. So
Yeah.
it was fun. It is fun. I mean, once you see them get it, like when they first realize or they do that one thing and it's just above everybody else, and their lights light up, and you're like, okay, so see, that's what we've been working on for a whole year.
Right. Right.
You know, so
totally worth it.
Yeah. Because that floppy noodle isn't, like you said, you could strike poses for Instagram photos, but you're not going to be able to move your body in the way that you really need to and be able to protect your joints and keep them healthy and that kind of thing. I'm recalling, as we're talking, a dancer who I went to college with and took class with every single day, and she was so floppy, and we were, most of us, jealous of her incredible hypermobility. And of course, at that time, I didn't know what hypermobility was. But I look back now and I realized that, you know, she probably didn't ever have someone like you to really work with her on that kind of thing. So
yeah, I think it's important to find the right teacher
also.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And educate yourself too. I mean, I think if you talk to, I mean, when I was growing up, it was Sylvie Guillem. You know, and of course there wasn't YouTube or anything like that. So any VHS tape that I would get, you know, and you could see, you know, where her body is. And of course there was hyper everything and craziness and all of that. But she had to have so much control in order to keep her balance on top of her foot so that she wouldn't be, you know, away. And that, I think that was the first extreme dancer. She was kind of like, you know, there was a lot of strength. She had to have a lot of strength to control her hypermobility.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And if you could go back in time, what, if anything, would you do differently?
I would have started with conditioning and alignment work earlier, because I became strong from repetition and from strong technique. You know, but it wasn't until I found cross training and Pilates and alignment later in my career that I realized you can work smarter. You don't have to do so much. You can do enough correctly and it will work. You know, working on my stamina earlier also. Because I was long and hypermobile, my stamina was not where it needed to be early on. And I was kind of jealous of other dancers that were shorter and more muscular and more compact, because they could do it right away and they could run through something like that. And I needed to like really do the variation 3 times. At the time, the way you worked on your stamina was doing your variation 3 times. You know,
over and over,
now,
right.
There's so many other ways that you can actually save your body, you know, from doing that. I mean, of course, it's great to run your variation 3 times, and sometimes that's what you need to do. But I would have had a mix. If I had a mix growing up earlier on, I would have liked that.
Sure. And You've hit so many fantastic points. I feel like I need to go back. Well, when we go back through, I'm definitely going to extract some great quotes from this conversation. Was there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
You guys were right on. I think what we started to talk about, how to really, that there are there's different types of hyperextension and hypermobility.
Mm-hmm.
I think hyperextension, we're talking mostly about hyperextension in your legs and the sitting back on your legs and on your hyperextension. I have something that I do that they stretch their knees and their heels are apart. I have them bring their heels together, actually in plie. And then from there, push the floor and stretch their knees as much as they can, making room in the hip and the inner thigh to stretch their knees. Because I find that if they sit back, of course, they're always gonna, they're gonna go on point and they're gonna have that line and whatever,
right.
But you're not strengthening the right muscles for your leg to be as straight as it can be without sitting back. So I think teachers need to be aware. Once you see a kid like that, just educate yourselves. Educate yourself and, see other dancers that have gone through it, see other teachers that have done it, and listen to people like you and podcasts like this and see how other people are doing it. I think it's important,
And lower your leg.
Lower your leg. Lower your leg. I don't care.
Build your strength, lower your leg. If anybody gets anything out of our conversation today, build your strength, lower your leg.
Build your strength, lower your leg, and bring your heels together and first.
Your heels together.
Thank you.
Let your knees from the inside to all the way to your core, not from the back. And I think it makes them feel. There are teachers that have asked me this. It's like, Mariaelena, their knees are bent. I said, their knees are. Because you feel like you're halfway, you shouldn't be halfway. You should be straight. You just have to give the room in the hip and in the rotation for that knee to stretch. Of course, your knee in fifth position sometimes is going to bend a little bit when you close it, but you have to actually work towards not doing that.
Right.
Instead of, and it all comes from the hips and your core too, on how you pull up by pressing down.
I absolutely agree. And I tell my dancers all the time, there's a difference between what your standing leg will look like and what your gesture leg will look like. And your gesture leg can be as wonked out and hyperextended and beautiful as you want it to be. But your standing leg, you can't just lock back into it and just hang there and think you're going to be fine. There's such a difference between a standing leg and a gesture leg. Thank you for that.
And for those pearls here that we're adding at the end, that rolling through the foot, in the tendu or whatever, that's something that I feel like I'll watch things sometimes and I think, oh my gosh, what is there something wrong with their metatarsals that they never go through the demi point? Yeah, it's like what's happening here?
I think that's the part that I learned later in life. Once we talked about alignment and cross training and doing all those things. Because I became very strong, but I didn't have all of that in the beginning. And then it was such a difference once I started, once I came to SAB and I started working through my feet a little bit more and doing Pilates and gyrotonics and seeing other dancers, that contact with the floor, that strength you create by being into the floor, it's absolutely makes an absolute difference.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And where can people best find you and learn more about the fantastic work that you're doing?
Well, my Instagram, it's Mariaelena Ruiz Official. I have a website, mariaelenaruiz.com. And in our school, Cary Ballet, it's the Instagram, and then caryballet.com. It's our website. And you can find me there.
Fabulous.
Excellent.
And we'll have links to our on the show notes also to all those places. So fabulous. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. I learned so much. This has been so fantastic. And everyone, you've been listening to Bendy Bodies with the Hypermobility MD. Today, our guest has been Mariaelena Ruiz, award-winning ballet master, teacher, and director of the professional training program at Cary Conservatory. And Mariaelena, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on the Bendy Bodies podcast with us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I learned so much, and I'm grateful to have talked to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bendy Bodies with the Hypermobility MD, where we explore the intersection of health and hypermobility for dancers and other artistic athletes. Please leave us a review on your favorite podcast player. Remember to subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. Be sure to subscribe to the Bendy Bodies YouTube channel as well. Thank you for helping us spread the word about hypermobility and associated conditions. Visit our website, www.bendybodies.org, for more information. For a limited time, you could win an autographed copy of the popular textbook, Disjointed: Navigating the Diagnosis and Management of Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders, just by sharing what you love about the Bendy Bodies podcast. On Instagram, tag us at Bendy_Bodies and on Facebook at Bendy Bodies Podcast. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the co-hosts and their guests. They do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of any organization. The thoughts and opinions do not constitute medical advice and should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. This podcast is intended for general education only and does not constitute medical advice. Your own individual situation may vary. Do not make any changes without first seeking your own individual care from your physician. We'll catch you next time on the Bendy Bodies podcast.